Have you ever wondered what it really takes to make Agile work? Well, at the Global Agile Summit, we're bringing you real-life, first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action. Whether you're a leader, a product innovator, a developer, you'll hear practical insights from those who've done it. They'll be telling their own stories from the stage. I'll tell you more about this at the end of this episode, so stay back and listen to the full detailed description of what we have in store for you at the Global Agile Summit. But if you can't wait, you can go right now to globalagilesummit.com and check out our full schedule. For now, on to the episode, but I'll see you at the end of this episode with more details on the Global Agile Summit. Talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special bonus episode. We're going to talk about something that is as ancient as humans are, although we probably didn't use the same technology before. But more about that in a second. We have with us today from the US, Amy Daughters. Hey, Amy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So imagine reconnecting with hundreds of people you once knew. Could a handwritten letter change your relationship forever? Well, stay tuned. Amy's going to tell us all about that and how her lessons can help you in your leadership positions as well. Amy has a remarkable ability to inspire and connect with audiences, and her work centers around revitalizing human connections. So important as a skill for leaders. I'm just right now talking to a few leaders about that as it happens. She achieves this by rekindling the age-old art of handwritten letters. And before you turn off, to listen to the story, because there's some amazing insights coming in. Her books, such as Dear Dana and You Cannot Mess This Up, have touched the hearts of many, inspiring vulnerability and genuine kinship, critical characteristics for great leaders. So, Amy, let's dive into first your story. Can you share your story behind this incredible letter writing experiment, how it began and what sparked it?
Yeah, absolutely, Vasco. I like to frame the story. I was minding my own business. I'm a freelance writer, an author. So I was just doing my thing. And I get on Facebook one day, 2014, very innocently, like we all do. And I had a memory of a friend that I'd worked with a summer camp here in Texas 35 years ago. And I'd always remembered her because we had big personalities. We'd probably spent 6 weeks together. And I just typed her name in, like we do on social media. And there she pops up. I go in, I spend 5 minutes looking through her life. We friend request each other. It doesn't mean anything. And I found out right away that she has 5 kids. The youngest is the only son, and he's battling cancer.
Ouch.
And it's a serious battle. I follow along. I don't hit like, I don't comment on anything. And then about 9-10 months later, he goes into remission. I'm like, oh, relief. As a human being, as a mom, as a person, I immediately get, invested in the story. Well, he goes back home from, battling the cancer. So it kind of goes on the back burner of my consciousness, but I still see her on my Facebook newsfeed. About 6 months after that, the cancer comes back. He goes back to the cancer hospital. And I sit down, and I'm a writer. I have this freelance schedule. I'm writing about sports at the time. So I sit down at my desk on a Sunday, and it's like a lightning bolt hits me. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start sending this woman and her son letters at the facility where he's fighting the cancer. And I hadn't written anyone a letter in 25 years. I wasn't the letter girl. I wasn't trying to go on some meaningful journey. I was just living my regular life and got inspired with this idea, which I actually followed through on. So I wrote Dana and her son Parker for probably 8 to 10 weeks, awkwardly, cards in the mail, saying I was thinking about them, that, their fight meant something to me personally. I wasn't sure why. And then, and there's no good words for this, the year turns into 2015, and Parker passes away from cancer at only 15 years old. So total devastation. Had nothing to do with me, and I knew that, but I kind of thought, kind of felt invested in this, so what should I do? And I thought, I'll just keep writing the letters. And only this time I didn't really know where she lived because this was Facebook. And so I looked up, I knew her husband. He was an attorney. So I just started, and this story is levels of me behaving irrationally, and I understand that completely. but I couldn't stop myself because I think I was on this mission that I was supposed to go on, and life or fate or God just gave me this, where I was going to have this story at the end of this journey. So I keep writing her, but now I'm sending letters to her husband's law office. And the whole time I'm doing, I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. She lost her son. She doesn't know who you are. Why are you sending letters? Couldn't stop. So probably 4 or 5 months. And if I said, I thought every week I was going to quit because it was, again, irrational. Well, then 5 months into it, I go out to my mailbox and there's a 10-page letter from this woman, a handwritten letter. She talks about her grief. She talks about her family. And then all of a sudden, this kicks off 2 years of me and this woman in 2015, 16, and 17 of us communicating exclusively through the United States Postal Service. And it created this incredible vacuum where we could say whatever we wanted to, because I didn't know when she was reading what I said. She didn't know what I was reading. So she opened up about her grief. I looked at my life from the outside in. We trusted each other. We cared about each other. And it was beautiful, Vasco, because I didn't know how she voted. She didn't know how I voted. And, in the United States, this is a polarizing time. And this was during the first Trump election, so the Trump Clinton election. So super powerful. I didn't know what her religious views were. I didn't know what she thought about any kind of socio, issues.
So basically, you were relating to each other as just fellow human beings.
Beautifully said. That's exactly what we were doing. And it was so powerful that about 6 months into this pen pal, because that's what it was, modern pen pal relationship, I was like, if this can happen from this one girl who I really not even really sure like what our memories are, then what about this other 500 people I'm Facebook friends with? What happens if I write them? So then I went off the chart nuts, and I put everyone's name in a box. And it was like a social experiment. I got stationery and I got a journal, and I set off on this journey of writing every single one of my Facebook friends. And I didn't think I was going to finish. I don't know how serious I was, but once I got about 100 letters in, I realized that this was probably going to be probably the most meaningful thing I was ever going to do in my life. And my finger was bleeding by the end. I didn't think I was going to make it to the end, but it blew up my life to the point now that I speak about it. I wrote a book about it. This was never the plan for me. And I realized that any relationship, just the impact of a handwritten note or letter, any place where there's a human relationship involved has such power to do such good that really, I think I'm going to spend the rest of my life talking about it, Vasco.
Mm-hmm. And actually, this is a very interesting perspective that when you write a letter to someone, whether it's a Christmas card that you write once a year, or whether it is a regular pen pal correspondence, just like the one that you described, there's a lot more that is put into the paper than could ever be put into a Facebook comment or an Instagram comment, or whatever, right? Like we are uh, going back in some sense, and maybe I don't know if that's how you felt. In some sense, we're kind of going back to our origins as human beings, and we're using technology that isn't anymore today's technology, right? Like most people would write texts or whatever. And that also puts us in a completely different state of mind. Is that how you experienced it?
Oh, absolutely. The most changed person from all this was me because I looked at after the letters with Dana, and that's what drove me to write the other letters. It made me look at everything in my life differently. It changed who I was because my appreciation and gratitude meter for all these people who showed up in my life, because it went from being this list, and this is so relatable, of 500 something people that I known for 15 minutes or 5 years. It depends on how choosy you are and your friend, when you accept friends. But I realized that all these people, one, were amazing individuals that I hadn't really appreciated on an individual level. They were, in their own arena, they had experienced their own real messy, triumphant, horrible, beautiful, real life. And I was connected to each of these amazing people for a reason. And there's such hope in that. And then all of a sudden, I didn't care if they voted Democrat or Republican or what their religious values were, because it all came down to what you said. This human connection was the most important thing. And I think the other biggest takeaway is what the letters meant to them. I had no idea. And this is where we can dig into this, the power we can use in relationships as leaders with employees, with customers. You can put this in any direction you want to. And the power we have in our own hands with about 15 minutes and the cost of a postage stamp if you're going to mail it, because it takes effort, and individuals who receive this are going to understand. I can talk a lot about that. The effort it took to, and you're treating them like an individual, important, valuable connection that they have.
Yeah. And I want to explore that because, of course, we're in the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. So we're going to talk about leadership and coaching and connection and accepting others and treating others as valuable and unique human beings, right? Which is some of the things that you've already said. Um, and the writing of the letter also shows something that leaders often struggle to show, which is genuine care that creates this deep and lasting connections, bonds, right? So what do you think are some of the lessons that managers and leaders can take from your experiment in how they can help improve, shape workplace culture in their teams?
Right. And I think it just comes back to what, and I've spoken to so many groups, real estate agents, leaders, women leaders. I mean, so in so many different ranges. And I told you that at the beginning of my journey with this story, I didn't realize how it fits so well into exactly what you're talking about is leadership, because it is one tool in your toolkit as a leader that will have more meaning than most anything else you can do outside of a huge check for a bonus. Now, I don't think I could probably compete with that. But here's what's going to happen, Vasco. If you take the time as a leader, first of all, as leaders, we don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time. And there's a lot of talk about, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. But when someone receives a handwritten item from you, let's use the employee as let's say I work for you, Vasco. You're my supervisor, my vice president, my manager, whatever your role is in the organization. If I receive a handwritten, let's say I I did and I achieved something at work, an accomplishment of some kind, and you recognize that, not with an email, not with a shout out, but you send me this little note with like 3 sentences in it and put it on my desk, put it in an office mail it to me, however you do it. It's not an email, it's not a text. I'm going to have that in my hands, and it's going to be your handwriting, so it's going to be very personal. And I'm going to immediately, and I know this because I experienced this with 600 different people in a different arena, but immediately I'm going to realize that Vasco, my supervisor, took the time and the effort, and the higher up on the food chain you are is even better, to do this for me, that what I did mattered enough to him, was important enough, was valued enough for him to sit down, and I'm going to click, 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 click. I'm going to realize that you had to sit down, you had to find the envelope, you had to write the things down, you had to seal it, you had to put my name on it, and your administrative assistant didn't do it. You did it. You could have sent me something that they did for you. I mean, people see that and it still means something to them, but human beings get that. And all of a sudden I'm going to think, oh my God, that's how much I matter in this organization. That's how much I'm valued. And you talk about things about employee engagement, retention. You can't gauge the power of what this is going to do, because I've talked to so many people who've utilized it, and really we can't gauge the impact it's going to have.
So here's the thing, like I hear you say that, and I'm totally with you. Like I agree with everything that you said, how important it is for the person receiving it, how important it is for them to feel valued and that you took the time to write it for them. But the thing that I am most amazed about is the story from the perspective of the person who writes the letter, because you were changed by that experiment just as much as the other people receiving the letters were, right?
Right. And it goes back to the leader writing the letter. It's going to change Vasco's perception. Probably just as much, if not more, than it's going to change my perception as the employee, because you're going to look for, it's multi-leveled. One, as human beings in this culture of like frantic culture where everything is, because things are messy. I mean, we're dealing with human beings as leaders. You're going to know that that's the one good thing. Let's say you're going to commit to writing 2 notes a week or 1 note a week or something reasonable, not 580. That's ridiculous. But you're going to
because no one
feel
has done that before, right?
right. But you're going to look at your employees different, because you're going to giving them that gratitude. You're going to feel this connection to them, and you're going to feel like you've done something very tactile that has made a difference in your organization, and that hope is going to drive you, and you're going to be a better leader, a better human being, a better person in the organization. And plus, you're going to feel that gratitude I felt in a different way for the people, the employees, because it's going to make you sit down and recognize that in a different way because you're going to put effort towards it, and you're going to also, because the other question I get asked a lot is, what if I don't feel comfortable doing it? Well, I didn't feel comfortable doing it the whole time I did it. I still write a note to, most days of a week, I sit down and write somebody a note because it honors the whole story. It's the best version of me, and I still feel the block. I still feel like, why am I doing this? But then the impact it has, if you just let it go, if you let the momentum take you, you will never go back to not doing it.
The thing that really struck me as I was reading your stories, that we hear all of these people talking about vulnerability and how important it is leaders to show vulnerability. And there's a lot of good research and books written on that. But the handwritten letter just speaks vulnerability, right? Like it's your raw self. There's no chat GPT writing that for you.
Right. And think about it's intimate, like, and humans need that. Like I'm holding in my hand, let's say, especially when now we all work remotely, it's even more powerful now because I'm holding something that was meant just for me in my hands, that is from my direct supervisor. And then you're showing vulnerability with your handwriting. This is something, and you want to write it neatly, but you don't need more than 2 sentences. This does not have to be an epistle. This does not have to be 6 pages. You can do this. You can pack such a punch in two sincere sentences and then Vasco at the end. And it's so personal. But, the thing is, the other element of the note writing that's so powerful is it's non-intrusive. You're not saying something to someone in a group if that's not what they like, or you're not, you know what I mean? They're getting it. They don't have to do anything with it. It's a gift to them that they don't have to respond to, that they don't have to do anything with. They don't have to write a thank you note for a note, but you have to write a thank you note if you get sent flowers, or if you receive an item. But you're giving them a gift that's non-intrusive. They don't have to respond immediately to. They can let it marinate. If they want to write back, great. If they don't want to write back, fine too. There's no rules to this engagement, and that there's something so beautiful and simple about that.
Mm-hmm. When I think about the kind of the process of writing, right? Like process of writing is to some extent also the same as communication, but it's more thoughtful, right? Like it's not talking, right? It's not writing a short comment on somebody's Slack message. It is actually more thoughtful, and we realize that because it actually takes more effort to make the hand move than it takes to type keyboard, at least for most people these days. And one of the things that I am really curious about, and that's an experiment I will definitely run myself in my company and some of the clients I work with, is to try to use handwritten letters to communicate also that the message itself is more important than everything else that is communicated about. And one example for leaders is, for example, if there's a significant change in strategy or vision for the organization, to actually do that as a handwritten letter to their most direct reports, or let's say the 20 people you interact the most with, or whatever that is, but to have that ability, because I think it helps the leaders also crystallize the message. You will have to repeat it. You can't copy paste handwritten letters, right? So you have to repeat it. So it will also crystallize it and make it personal, because at the end of the day, organizations are, we could call it embodiment of ideas, like, vision strategies, sales strategies, product strategies, whatever that is. And the ideas are communicated through, in this case, it would be through handwritten letters, which makes it so much more personal and impactful.
Right. And you want to tell somebody they're a valuable part of this change process, that their, with their contributions to this process is important, is that you took the time to write that note and explain it to them. That's how important they are. That's how critical they are in the success of this, change or endeavor or whatever it is. And they're going to feel, I'm important. I'm all in because this person is all in for me.
And one part of your story that really triggered this thought in me is when you shared that some people told you that they treasure the letters that they received from you. So it definitely has a large emotional impact.
Well, yeah, the number one response I got from writing the letters, the 600 letters, was, I am going to save your letter in a special place for the rest of my life. the impact. And I'll tell you a story. I did a women's leadership conference I spoke at, and a woman contacted me like 8 months after the fact, and she said that she had practiced, like she had done one letter a week, then two letters a week, notes, just small notes, to people in her organization. And she said she walked around one time to like the world of cubicles, and she said she all over the place these things were hung up like a treasured, like one person had it in a frame, because they were so proud and so just completely it meant so much to them emotionally, and that feeds over when you're at work to effort levels and buy-in and engagement, all those buzzwords we use. They felt valued and important enough to hang it up like a plaque, like a trophy. It was that important.
Yeah. So, what you just said, if I could describe it like, if let's say, imagine I was coaching a leader, I could describe like, look, the best way to make someone feel valued is to do something for them that nobody else has ever done.
That's it. You just hit the nail on the head, because the other thing is this, back in time where we're doing something that, and you said it beautifully at the beginning, that humans have done since, and I love that, since the beginning of time. But the other takeaway is going to be, when's the last time somebody hand wrote me anything? And especially specifically for me, and if you think about, if you want to quantify how valuable this process is, look at organizations that are spending money on software and hardware that makes communication to customers mainly look like handwritten communications. Because I know here in the US, if you go look at your mailbox, there are people trying to, like Amy Daughters with my address, and it looks like blue ink. It's not blue ink. That's how powerful it is. It's powerful enough to organizations to spend money, but you have that power, and it's only going to take you, especially when you start rolling, it's going to take you 10 minutes. It's going to take you 10 minutes and sincerity, and the only things you need to do this are to be a human being with a heart. That's all you really need to get in this. You don't have to be a writer. You don't have to have great handwriting. I mean, you got to slow down and do it right. You just need two sentences and your name written. You will blow people's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I would even say that it doesn't need to look good at all, because it is about being personal. And I mean, you know this, and some people listening might know this, but many probably won't know that our handwritten notes are probably one of the most intimate things we have these days, because nobody sees them.
Right. And you're showing when you think about that powerful manager employee relationship, you're showing them something no one else sees, their handwriting, because we don't work with handwriting anymore. When I got in the workforce, there was purchase orders, and there was things where you would see notes, and we don't even do that. It's all electronic now. And that's great. We're so much more efficient than we were. Like, we've dropped a lot of things we didn't need to do. But again, it just gives this whole idea even more power. AI, great. It gives this more power. Chat GPT, wonderful. It just piles the power on. And again, this is one tool in your toolkit. That's all it is. And it's so simple. It's almost easy to overlook it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's completely counterintuitive. The whole idea is almost too easy.
Yeah, and I think that you just said it, right? Like, it's so simple that nobody will think of it as a great idea, because it's so simple. Now, there is one aspect that we haven't talked about that I think is very important, and you've mentioned it in your story, which is this: that writing becomes a self-reflection for the person writing as well, right? And I think that this can also become kind of a tool for intentional and empathic communication, right? Like, is that what you find, like, when you talk to other leaders, when you share the story and you hear their thoughts, and especially those that have already tried it? Do you see this happening, the self-reflection and the empathy and the intentional communication as part of the process?
Oh, absolutely. Because when you see that you can have positive impact on anyone in the workforce, I mean, in the workplace, outside of the workplace, as human beings, we crave that. We crave making a difference, doing something that's good. And it does change it. And based on my experience, it changes the mindset of the leader. It makes you look at yourself in a different light. Absolutely, it does. And the empathetic component absolutely is going to be, and it's a hard thing to quantify, and we want numbers. We want to know how it's going to make a difference. We want someone to quantify. And this is one of those things that, I'm a numbers girl, and you can't completely put a number to this. I mean, I'm a woman with a spreadsheet for everything, and that's not this thing. It's more powerful than that. And the only way I can the only way you're going to quantify it is within yourself somehow, and you're just
Yeah.
going to be changed in a very good way.
Absolutely. I totally see that. Now, I don't have a lot of handwriting practices myself other than the Christmas cards that I send once a year. But there's one thing that I do as a practice in writing, which is that when I'm preparing my therapy session, I write my notes before the therapy session by hand. And I do that on purpose specifically because it slows my thinking down, right? Like when I type too fast, but when I write by hand, it slows my thinking down, which allows me to be a lot more reflective. And of course, that's the goal of therapy. So I want to use that as a practice. And I think that that's something that I would like to highlight from my own experience is this ability to to kind of get in touch with the different way of thinking in our brain, which is slower, more thoughtful, more deliberate. Is that how you felt when you were writing those letters?
I absolutely did. And I think you said that beautifully. It slows everything down because the mechanical process is slower. So it requires you to do that. So it almost does that magically, just because of the mechanics of doing it. And it does. And you think about that, like you used to take notes when you went to university. It does slow it down, and it has a different impact, like rewriting your notes. Some people study that way. It does it because it slows your brain down. It makes you think about each element of it differently. And so the note writing or the letter writing will absolutely have that component of it too, which again leads it to being more meaningful. And somehow it takes a hold of you more than it would have if you sent an appreciative email or text.
Okay, so we've talked about how handwritten notes can help clarify ideas, motivate employees, solidify visions, and act as an incredible self-reflection tool. I think we're all sold on the idea, Amy. And I bet the people listening to us are thinking, okay, but how could I make this a practice? Like, do you have like a set of tips that you have for those that maybe already sold on the idea and just want to get it started? Some small steps we could take?
Right. And I think best practices are one, you got to get past the block that's going to be there for a lot of people. Like, what do I say? Am I going to sound disingenuous? Am I going to sound authentic? I think you have to trust, again, that human part of you that'll know what to do. And I think you're going to have to fight that at the beginning. You have to fight that block of, okay, how is this going to be received? Because nothing's foolproof in human interaction. But I would say I would give this a strong 97% success rate. But I'm saying those other 3% are probably not going to tell you they don't like it because I don't really think. I just don't see any. There's really no backside to this. So if you can get over the hump of, I'm not sure if I want to do this. I think that's the first step. And then two, you got to make this fit into who you are as a leader. And I think that the first thing to do is commit to one note a week if that works for you. Commit to doing it in the morning. I think that's the best way before you get started on all the other stuff. You sit down and you write one note on Wednesdays. And then you let that see how the momentum goes and do two notes and three notes, but make it a first thing in the morning thing. And don't get caught up in it having to be long to be meaningful. Two sentences and your name, one sentence, because it's got to fit your personality too. I'm not a brief person. Brevity is not one of my gifts, but you can pack a punch in a sentence on a sticky note, honestly, but you can get a nice little card and you don't have to get stationery, you can go out to your local retailer. I don't know where that is in Finland, but we all have a retailer that sells little note cards that are small. That's all you need. That's all you need, and a ballpoint pen. And to your point, don't look for perfection, because what is going to sell this is that it's not perfect. Because
Yeah.
and they know how you work already. They know you have a standard because they get your emails. They get your communications. This is different. That's where the vulnerable thing is. Your handwriting's great just as it is. You want to spell everything, right? But just two sentences and just let yourself go there and see what happens. And I guarantee you, and don't look for a reply right away because it may mean so much. And I would just keep doing it whether anyone replies or not, because we don't need a reply to validate we've made a difference. That's the world we live in. This is a different world. This is a separate world of consciousness that you're going to be in.
Yeah, it definitely gives us access to that separate world of consciousness. Now, Amy, if people want to know more about your story, what is the book that you would recommend they pick up immediately?
Well, Dear Dana is my book, but if you go to my website, it's got more about my journey, about, my speaking, the book, and it's www.amydaughters.com and my mailing address there. So if you write me a letter, I'll write you back. I'd love to hear any thoughts you have or questions you have specifically for me. I'd love to communicate about this. But Dear Dana is the book that chronicles both my reconnection with Dana, and it features 52 snippets of the Facebook letters and replies, and kind of 52 of the most powerful takeaways I learned from the story. It's super inspiring, not because I wrote it, but just because it's a great story that, fate decided to, let happen to me so I could have this. It's not really about platform. It's not really about selling books. I mean, I'm an author. I'm a small business person, basically. But to me, it's about this idea of what we can do as human beings to make a difference in whatever arena we're participating in.
And you definitely have made a difference, Amy. Thank you very much for being with us in this show and for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Well, thank you so much, Vasco. It was a pleasure.
Hey, friend, thank you for staying. Here is all you need to know about the Global Agile Summit. If you've ever suffered or know people who are suffering from agile fatigue, this event is for you. Agile fatigue is that feeling that settles in when we can't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. We get discouraged, especially when conversations revolve around the same old frameworks, the same old buzzwords and theories. We don't feel that energy anymore. Well, the Global Agile Summit is a different kind of event. We're bringing you real-life first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action and transform the way you work. The Global Agile Summit will happen in Tallinn, Estonia, May 18th, that's the workshop day, and then 19th and 20th, the conference day. And Tallinn, Estonia is one of the most innovative tech hubs in Europe. The Global Agile Summit is hosted together with Latitude 59, which is kind of a citywide celebration of software startups and groundbreaking ideas. And we'll have a shared ticket for you to attend those events as well. So who will be speaking? Well, we've got an incredible lineup of thought leaders in software and Agile. For example, Clinton Keith, the person who literally wrote the book on game development with Scrum, and is busy bringing Agile to the world of game development. You must check his session. The very famous and well-known Jürgen Apelo, author of Management 3.0, will be talking and exploring about AI's impact on leadership. We also have Gojko Adzic, who's taking an unconventional look at the product growth with his lizard optimization keynote. Other speakers include, for example, Sven Dietz, who's challenging everything we know about software development by literally ditching contracts and estimates. Can you imagine? His teams deliver software before their competitors are even done with the contract negotiation. How agile is that? But there's more. We'll cover engineering practices in our developer track with talks on, for example, AI-assisted test-driven development, developing products in minutes with a different approach to how we develop, configure, deploy platforms, and much more. We also have a product track where we cover cutting-edge ideas around product discovery, delighting customers with product delight frameworks. We'll have a talk about that. And we also have an agile business track where we will talk about, for example, open strategy, a very agile approach to managing organizations and delivering software faster to clients, faster than you can even write a contract, literally. I mean, I already told you about Sven Dietz's story. It's amazing. It definitely is a must-see I'm sure you'll be inspired and get a lot of ideas for your own software projects and software delivery. Now, whether you're a business leader, a product innovator, or a developer, you'll definitely find value in our 3 focused tracks. That's Agile Business for those working with businesses and organizations, Agile Product for product managers, product owners, and innovators, and Agile Developer for the builders, making Agile work in practice, the coders, the testers, the designers, the producers, the Scrum Masters, you name it. If you join, you will meet over 200 Agile professionals from all over the world. People who, just like you, want to grow, want to share, and want to learn by challenging the ideas that don't work anymore. At the Global Agile Summit, you'll get new connections, fresh ideas, and the energy to take your own Agile to the next level. And who knows, maybe even find your next career opportunity. So don't miss out. Check out the full program and grab your ticket now at globalagilesummit.com. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in Tallinn, Estonia in May. I'll see you there.